loaded all the stuff back up in the car. I don't remember how I got. There was that bag of stuff. So I parked the car at Home Depot. Somehow I got that big trash bag full of all their clothes and the Drano bottles and stuff. Somehow I got that back over to the hotel. I may have driven their car back to the hotel and thrown that in the trunk of my car, and then driven their car back over and parked it. I remember when I parked their car in the store parking lot. The only thing in it was stuff that had belonged to them, like the suitcase full of their like miscellaneous stuff, like laundry and stuff like that. And then after I had all my stuff packed up at the hotel, I checked out of the hotel. It was probably around 8 or so. And drove down the road. There was either a Walgreens or a CVS pharmacy right across from a bank, and the Home Depot there where their car was parked. I left my rental car there in that pharmacy parking lot and walked across the street. And didn't really have a disguise on at that point. I think that's why they got that description of somebody with long hair driving the car, because I think all I had on was my gloves and sunglasses, and drove their car up north, and only made it about halfway, and then I started just like a whole bunch of things. I realized that their car had issues, and I think it was also almost out of gas, and I was still really amped. I didn't really trust myself to rob a bank because I hadn't slept all night, and I was kind of shaky. And so I decided to scratch that. I was thinking I would just park the car. I was going to torch the car. There was an area back down where I buried the guns from before in Vermont, and I was going to drive their car down there and torch it after the bank robberies, but then for some reason I was thinking I could still use the car. I was going to go up to Maine and chill out for a few days and then come back through Vermont, and I was thinking if the car was still there, then I would take the car and maybe still do some bank robberies with it and then torch it, but yeah, I wasn't. By the time I got back, of course, the police had already found it. So that was pretty much it. I went up to Maine, had their cell phones with me. There was people calling them, and I had their card information and stuff. But
how do you know there were people calling them?
Oh, the phones were turned on. Their phones were on. It was their work calling them. I remember I looked through. Only one of the cell phones was working, and at least if what they told me was true, they said the other one was like emergency calls only or something. The plan was expired, but there was one cell phone they had that was working. It seems like it wasn't a very good one, and it seems like it didn't have text messaging. And so when their work started calling, because it was a work day, I think it was either a Thursday or a Friday or something, I thought about answering the phone and telling the person what was going on, that it was a kidnapping, and that they're, like give them the account information. But then I just decided I didn't want to talk to anybody on the phone. If their phone had had text messaging, I probably would have done it, but it seems like they didn't. So I drove, started heading up to Maine. I think I was on the interstate, and I was at a rest area somewhere, and then I realized I should probably turn the phones off. because the one phone I had in the front with me, I'd forgot about the other phone I had in the back of the car in the suitcase, the one that wasn't supposedly working. And but the one I had with me, it rang a few times on the drive, and I finally just took the battery out of it. But the other one, it didn't occur to me that it might still be able to track where it was picking up service or whatever, so I didn't think of that till I got to Maine. I drove straight through. I think I was up for about 30 hours on that one, because I hadn't slept all the night before, obviously. But I think I got to Maine, I was pretty tired, and then it dawned on me that other phone was still on, so I parked alongside the road somewhere in Maine and was digging through the suitcases and found it and took the battery out of that one too, and then drove the rest of the way up to Maine. I think my brothers knew that. I think my brothers knew I'd had a rough night or something, because I was pretty out of it by the time I got up there. I don't really even remember what I did when I got to Maine. I think I just hung out with my brother who lived in Bangor and maybe crashed on his couch for a while. And then we had a bunch of work to do that I'd wanted to do on the farm up there. So we went up north to the farm and.
What's the farm?
It's like 140 acres that my dad had bought in upstate Maine. It's like a maple syrup farm type thing. And there used to be a house there. The house burned down, and there's still a barn. So whenever I would go to Maine, we would usually head up north and camp out in the barn. They had part of the barn converted to like a crash pad or something, and so we crashed there, and I had rented an excavator and to do some work on the place, and there was a party that night, and a bunch of my brother's friends came over, and that was, I don't remember how it seemed like I was only there for a few days. We were working on the place, and then I was driving. As I was driving back down to Vermont, I had mellowed out, and was starting to decide, plan what I was going to do next, and stopped at that park, the National Forest in New Hampshire. For some reason, I was still really amped up. There was this parking lot up in that place in New Hampshire. There was a white Dodge Neon. It had "Just Married" written on the back window, and there's this young couple. They were hanging out down by the river, and I was watching them for a while. That was after I had gone up. I decided at that point that I wasn't going to do the ransom thing. I didn't think it would work that well anyway, because I didn't have a picture, all I had was their cell phone, so I didn't think it was going to be worth it. So I just decided to burn the suitcases and all that stuff. So I went up in the woods there in New Hampshire, and on my way back down, I saw this couple down the river. I don't know. I remember what I was thinking. I was thinking the gun I had, the .22, I was like, well, I'm going to have to throw the barrel and the bolt away anyway. I should use it again. And but there was fortunately for that couple, there was a park ranger. I didn't see him, but I saw his truck, so I figured he was out in the woods somewhere. I didn't want to take the risk that he came walking out of the woods or something. So yeah, I just hung out there and watched him for a while, and then I went started driving back to Vermont. Drove past where I parked the car in that parking lot, the apartment complex. That's where I had moved after I came back from driving their car up to the bank. I left their car at that apartment complex, and then parked my car a few spaces away and moved all the stuff out of their trunk, all their suitcases and stuff. I moved it into to the back of my car. But anyway, I drove back by on my way through Vermont, and I saw the crime scene tape, and I saw that I think at that time the dumpster right next to where I parked the car, I think that was gone too. So I knew that they were taking it seriously, and at that point I was glad that I hadn't used the phone or tried to do the ransom thing. I honestly didn't expect the cops to get on it that fast. I just figured, yeah, because I was going to have, originally I was thinking I would keep them at that house and maybe stay in Vermont another night, or at least keep her alive and have her call into her work. And but the house was just too close, like there was too much traffic, and I was worried about hanging out in the area with all that stuff. But yeah, that's what I was thinking originally, is that if she had called into work, told them that there was an emergency or something, that they never would have gone, they never would have got the search warrant on the house, the cops never would have even gone by. But as it was, they figured out pretty quick that there was something not right about the situation. And yeah, so by the time, I think it was less than a week, I was in Maine. So by the time I got back, drove back down through, I realized that they were already knew something serious had happened just from the crime scene tape, and drove. There's a ferry that crosses what is that big lake there? I think it's Lake Champlain. And I was going to take the ferry back across to New York. And I stopped at a little gas station and picked up a newspaper and was reading the articles about their disappearance. And sure enough, there was quite a bit in there about their disappearance. Like, it was clear that the police already suspected the worst, because they had the family they did a press conference, and the family, I guess they did an appeal to the public or appeal to the kidnappers or whatever. And I didn't see that until later, but I read about it in the paper, so I just decided it was better to get out of Vermont and go back to New York. So I went back to New York and hung out there for a day or two. And that's when I found that little boat launch. Did some fishing there and decided that was a good spot to drop the guns. I was going to keep their gun, but I decided it was pretty obvious that it was a brand new gun, and I was pretty sure it would be registered to them, so I figured it was probably better if I just tossed it. I didn't want to have it buried in the same bucket with mine, so yeah, I tossed it in that reservoir along with the parts from the Ruger.
And you tossed them in the same spot, right?
Yeah.
That's what you told us last time.
Yeah, I mean, unless the ice moved them around, they shouldn't be more than 10 or 15 feet apart, all three of those things. The barrel's out further. It's a heavy barrel, so...
It was pretty good weight, but they were actually very close together. So your estimate.
They found them?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. They find the bolt?
Yeah. I was surprised. I wasn't sure.
Did they drain the reservoir?
No. They're pretty good at what they do. What kind of stock did you have on the 22 that you disposed of?
I didn't get rid of the stock.
I know you didn't, but there's a couple that we found.
Well, there's almost 2 complete guns there, if I remember correctly. There's the one I built a few years ago. I didn't build it, I modified it. And then there's the newer one. The newer one is the one I used. That's the one that was my baby. I worked on that for a long time in Alaska. And that was what I was carrying the whole time I was back east. But it had it's the one with I think it was like a green laminated stock, and then the other one had a fiberglass stock or plastic stock. It used to be a folding stock that I had modified.
Was the laminated one, did it have a pattern or anything on the stock?
Yeah, it's laminated. It's got two different types of wood. It's like a plywood, and they laminate green and blonde or beige tan wood together.
Was that the weapon that you used when you shot Bill?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I figured.
You said when you're in your kit you had a pan and water, and what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you boil water for?
I'm not going into the details of all that.
But you didn't do that, or did you? You said it fell down through the hole.
Yeah, I had it. I was using it.
Yeah, I was curious about that too. Did you retrieve it?
Oh yeah,
The camp stove?
yeah.
Because I was thinking the same thing as Jeff. It fell down through the hole. I didn't know if you went down.
Yeah, it fell down. There, it was weird. There was a hole from the living room. The living room was right below where that bedroom was, and I think it was like an old stovepipe hole or something. But it went up right through the floor in the bedroom, and I had the little camp burner thing set up, and it tipped over at some point and fell down through that hole. But I went down and got it right away because it went out when it fell through. But yeah, I was paranoid that it might
Start the house on
yeah,
fire while
like
you were in it?
leak propane.
You mentioned that work had called on their cell phones. How did you know it was work?
I think I checked recent calls, and that was just a assumption I made, I guess. It was right around the time that they should be getting to work, and I was expecting someone to call because I had asked both of them like where they worked and what they did and who was going to be looking for them and what their names were and stuff. And yeah, so I think that's why I thought that.
Do you remember what the display of the phone said when you checked it? I mean, did it have a name, or
I think it was a name.
Did it say work, or
I think it was a name, but I'm not sure.
Do you remember when you left that house, whether the police car was still parked in the driveway?
Yeah, it was still there. Yeah. Yeah, from that bedroom window upstairs, I kept looking out the window at that. Because I had, there was like either a couple other small mattresses or, I think it was doors, like the doors that were taken off the hinges. I took those doors and I put them in front of the windows so that people wouldn't see my headlamp up there. But I could still look out and see, just in case anybody pulled into the driveway. But yeah, it was like once it started to get light, that's when I decided that I was gonna kill her that morning because I was originally thinking that I would tie her up and keep her there, and maybe stay another night in the hotel and then come back the next night and go from there. But yeah, I was there. There'd been too many things that went wrong on that one, and she almost got away, and I just didn't want to take the chance. And the road was really busy, so I just decided to kill her that morning and just get away from the house in case anybody had noticed, that there was a car there or something. But when I was driving back through Vermont, I planned my route back through Vermont so that I could come back on that road into Burlington. And I drove by the house. I knew it was unlikely that anybody had found them yet, but I just wanted to see, I guess, kind of see it in the daylight. And I was tempted to stop and check on the bodies and stuff, but it seems like it was in the afternoon and there was quite a bit of traffic, so I decided not to stop and just kept driving.
You said that you heard or saw that they found their car parked in, was it an apartment?
Well, I saw that. I drove. It was on the same route, basically back towards the freeway. The freeway that goes up north to where the ferry to New York. So that's the route I was driving. I passed the house and then I passed the apartment complex where the car had been, and I saw that there was the crime scene tape there, and I saw that the car was gone. So I knew that they had found it. But then, I read it was in the paper too, and I picked up the paper right before getting on the ferry. I was reading about it. They found that.
So then on that trip, then you drive back to Chicago?
Yeah, eventually. I don't remember how long I stayed in New York. It wasn't long, maybe a day or two after on my way back.
So just to make sure I understand, you came back from Maine and you stopped at the campground there in New Hampshire briefly.
Right.
And that's where you disposed of the suitcase and stuff. And that's where you saw the just married couple and the park ranger. And then from there you continued back to Burlington.
Yep.
And that was when you saw that the car was gone. The
Right.
crime scene tape was there.
Yep.
And then you decided to head back toward New York.
Yeah.
And you found the reservoir there and went ahead and...
Yeah, it was the same reservoir that I had been... I had when I was fishing in New York, I had a few places staked out for a couple nights, but there wasn't a lot of traffic, so it was pretty slim pickings. So I mostly just fished when I was there in New York. But I had been camped on that same reservoir basically, and then when I drove back through New York, I drove around to the other side of the reservoir and found that boat launch, and found that area where I could stash the guns and stuff. So,
Are reservoirs a particularly good place to fish, typically, or
not really? Not if you don't have a boat.
All right. Well, anything else at this time?
No. That pretty much wraps it up.